eyes are going to be on Chicago next week for the Democrat National Convention. And you've got the estimation of tens of thousands of protesters that are going to be on the scene, among thousands of delegates and elected officials heading to Chicago so Democrats can finalize their party's ticket. So what are we going to see on the streets? What are we going to see inside the convention hall? Somebody who's in Chicago right now and clearly seeing all of the fencing putting up, all of the ironclad gates being put up, and the increased security and street precautions. Independent Chicago reporter William Kelly joins us now. William, thanks for taking time, and I want to hear from you as to what you're seeing right now on the streets as we prepare for next week's Democratic National Convention. Good morning.
God bless you, Greg. Yeah, well, I'm seeing a lot of angry Chicagoans. They're calling hypocrisy. We had 80 plus people shot in Chicago last week. And, I mean, by any account, that's a war zone. And yet our public officials are telling us that they're going to keep the DNC party guests safe. This is not playing the way I think any political party or candidate would want it to play. Another, I think, good example, Greg, if I may. I've got a million of them. I don't know how much time you have, but here's a good one for you. Businesses are telling their employees to stay home. Now, the convention was sold to us that this would be a great opportunity for business, but yet they're telling their employees to stay home, Greg.
William, obviously thousands of people coming to Chicago specifically for the convention as members of the Democratic Party, as delegates, as officials that are going to be there. Of course, the Center Square will be on the ground up in Chicago. We'll be bouncing between the morning breakfasts for Illinois delegates to the McCormick Place for daily briefings to the convention hall for more interviews and analysis of what's going on the ground. But on the outside, William, up to 100,000 protesters? What are you hearing as far as the numbers, and what kinds of steps are city officials taking to keep everything in order so people can peacefully protest?
Well, a Democrat judge just told Democrat protesters that they couldn't protest too close to the Democrat convention. I mean, if apparently if it wasn't for Democrats, there wouldn't be a problem here, Greg. It's a weird, it's almost bizarre how this story is unfolding. I guess the good news is that we're going to be in the middle of it. I'm looking forward to reporting with you in person on this. But yeah, there are fences going up, and there's the red zone and the zone and the green zone, and they're going to search your car. And I mean, it doesn't feel like a party, Greg. It doesn't feel like any kind of party I would ever want to be invited to.
Well, I think what you're going to see, and having witnessed this firsthand from the Republican National Convention, again, a totally different convention, different atmosphere and everything. On the outside, it looked like it was, a bunch of people with signs being corralled by law enforcement on bikes. I even saw horses. Who knows what kind of modes of transportation the law enforcement in Chicago are going to have for next week's convention. I'm sure we'll see a mix, but the outside was somewhat organized, and people in the streets chanting with signs and whatnot. But blocks away, it was a totally different party. So kind of a split screen there, but ultimately you're saying that the protesters, are they going to be able to have the conventioners see and hear their protest with where they're going to be kept at bay by law enforcement?
Yeah, I think you just coined the phrase, Greg. Split screen America is what we're looking at here. We have, I believe in free speech. I believe I may not agree with everyone, but I would literally fight to the death to defend their rights to freedom of speech. And what really concerns me is that in the city of Chicago, we've already seen that Chicago is cracking down on free speech, and it breaks my heart. They're also predicting, by the way, migrant buses during the convention, and they're going to send them to the South Side, Greg. As someone who was born and raised on the South Side of Chicago, let me tell you, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Okay. So, it's really weird how we're hearing about protesters coming to Chicago. We're hearing about migrants being sent to Chicago. I don't see how this adds up to a successful experience for not only Democrat delegates, but for Chicagoans, Greg. It breaks my heart on every level.
Talk a bit more about the plans for the migrants that are already there, but also, if you could, share any insight you've got on the possibility of more buses of migrants coming from the southern U.S. border. State officials have said that they haven't seen that yet, but I mean, the Democrat convention, it doesn't start until Monday.
Right. Well, I mean, what is more dysfunctional at this point, Venezuela or Chicago? I mean, I'm just afraid. I guess if I had dark humor, I would find some kind of humor in this. I'm just afraid that Venezuelans are going to get off the bus from Venezuela and think that they've arrived back in Venezuela. I mean, at this point, it's very, very difficult, Greg, no joke, to tell the difference between Chicago and Venezuela. And I'm saying that as somebody who walks down Michigan Avenue every day. I mean, there was a big criticism of Richard M. Daley. Okay, not to be confused with Richard J. Daley. But so for people who maybe don't have all of the Daley, all of the DNC Chicago history timeline in front of them right now, but there was a big criticism of Richard M. Daley that when he hosted a DNC convention, that he was painting over graffiti and he was planting flowers in Michigan Avenue and he was putting up brand new, beautiful sculptures on bridges, etc. Really? That was the criticism back then? My God, how far have we fallen, Greg? We're at a point now where, we have a mayor who thinks that covering up graffiti is racist and preventing homeless people, mentally ill, violent homeless people, from attacking citizens on Michigan Avenue is racist.
William Kelly, obviously, in the next week or so, we're going to see a lot of activity in Chicago. Chicago police have already indicated that there's a lot of other law enforcement that are going to be coming in from outside of Chicago. I imagine they're going to be posted up around McCormick Place and around the United Center where the official activities are taking place. But Chicago police have said that they're going to be going out to all of the other 77 neighborhoods to ensure that those communities stay safe. What do you foresee happening here in the next week, especially over the weekend heading into next week? Are we going to see increased patrols? Are we going to see increased ability for law enforcement in Chicago to go after bad actors? Are we going to see prosecutors step up and actually look to detain people who may be arrested for crimes? How do you see this playing out next week?
Well, Kim Foxx has already said that she will prosecute people who protest the DNC. She just hasn't prosecuted anyone who has committed any number of violent crimes in the city of Chicago for what seems like forever. So, she's prosecuting a guy who threw a big gulp at her, believe it or not. But yet, a couple who lost their baby due to a vicious, violent attack in Streeterville, where we are. She uh, sentenced, or excuse me, charged the attackers with a misdemeanor. So I mean, it's you know, there's I guess what you would almost have to call a two-tier justice system in Chicago now. If you are a repeat violent offender, you don't have to worry about ever seeing more than a night or two in jail. But apparently, if you come to Chicago because you feel passionately and you want to have your voices heard, you can expect to be arrested. Uh, um, Superintendent Snelling who is by the way, appointed by the mayor. He's a political appointee, Greg, make no mistake about it, has said that he intends to keep the DNC party guests safe and the Chicagoans safe outside of the DNC, the bubble, the security bubble for the DNC. But clearly, the Chicagoans weren't safe last weekend. How are they going to be safe next weekend with people estimating 100,000 protesters, another 20,000, 50,000 migrants? How are Chicagoans going to be safe next weekend if they weren't safe last weekend, Greg?
William Kelly, independent reporter out of Chicago, greatly appreciate your time as always, and we'll have to find each other at some point next week so that we can hook up and maybe get a picture taken together instead of being virtual here. So greatly appreciated as always, and we'll talk soon. All right, be safe up there in Chicago.
God bless you, Greg. Thank you.
It is Illinois in Focus Daily. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell each and every weekday morning as we bring you things you need to know when you start your day here in the land of Lincoln. All right, next week is the Democratic National Convention. The Center Square will be on the ground. Be sure to get the podcast for Illinois in Focus Daily. Also get the Center Square's daily newsletter to stay plugged in. And so much more, all right? It is Illinois in Focus Daily.